Boom, there is the Monster Jig. That's right, there's a giant jig. And just so you can tell the difference, here's the mini flip jig and there's just the Monster Jig with no trailer. So we're gonna walk through the setup and how you're gonna throw this. So the muskie guys, when they see this thing, they see this giant jig, they immediately think, I just throw that on my regular stuff. But for bass fishermen, for example, the rod that I have that mini flip on is a 7.6 medium heavy. This is not enough. This reel, too small. It is too small. It will not handle something that this big. Once you put a trailer on it, look, this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about a massive, big profile, heavier, it's big. You need a bigger reel like we have right here. We'll show you here in just a second. But just to kind of show you some size comparisons, this is the Clutch Boss. This is kind of a popular size glide bait. Not a giant one, not like a giant. This is like, you know, as far as glide baits are concerned, the regular size. And so when you compare that bait next to the Monster Jig, we're talking in the same ballpark. You know, very much a similar profile. And if you're looking at just the jig, then there, you know, you're looking at just the front half of this bait. So from a size perspective, you're going to throw that bait on something similar to what you would throw a bigger glide like this, or maybe even a Depths 250. You know, a Depths 250 is not real thick, but man, it's really long. You know, it's longer than that bait right there. And just to show you size comparison, you know, it's definitely longer than that. So just to give you a little shot on that. But the setup, there's one of two rods from all the fishing I've done with the Monster Jig. There's one of two rods that I'll show you here in a second. But I mentioned the reel. That is very important. This is a Daiwa Tatula 300. It's a bigger framed. You've got these oversized pinion gears. The pinion gears are huge. I mean, the pinion gears are as big as this reel. And that is a big deal, because as you're throwing that bait out there, you got that bigger frame, the bigger handle to get a lot of leverage to be able to move that thing easily. And the other part is when you're going to, you know, flip it or cast it, this bigger frame, the bigger spool handles much, much better than something that's smaller like the Zillion. Zillion's amazing for regular jigs, chatterbaits, topwaters, you know, I mean, all the normal stuff. But when you are throwing a bigger bait, it's like you wouldn't throw that big Boss there on this reel either, because it's gonna blow it up. It is just not made. This reel is not made for throwing baits this big or this big. So that's number one. Number two is the rod. Most flipping sticks are underpowered. I say that again. Most flipping sticks are underpowered when you're talking about a true Monster Jig or one of these big baits right here. You need something that's going to be able to load throughout. You don't need something that's super, super stiff. I would say arguably my first choice is, I could go either way really, is a rod that you would punch heavy grass with. And if you have a good rod that you would punch heavy grass with, this is a Cashin punch rod that I designed for them, especially for punching. You know, we're taking a 1 to a 2 ounce weight and pitching it into heavy matted vegetation. When that bait gets through there and you get that bite, you're going to reel down and you're going to lean back, and then you're going to have to pull that fish. Hopefully it's a big one, like a 5, 6, 7, 8 pounder, as Roland Martin would say. Get one of those 5, 6, 7, 8 pounders, and you're going to be able to lean back on it, and then you've got to pull the whole fish, grass, and everything. So you need a rod that's got a lot of power. Not a little bit, but a lot of power. That is key. That is key, and that's exactly what this rod can do. You could pull, it's a 710. It's we call it a heavy. It's a moderate fast heavy. I would almost say it's probably extra heavy. Just probably really extra heavy. but it is, we call it a heavy. It's counterbalanced, so the rod tip stays up. It's got the weight in the butt. So if you're going to be casting that jig or even flipping it, I really, really recommend this reel to be able to work that bait properly. But the other rod, you know, for you swim bait guys, you may already have an extra heavy type swim bait rod. The big difference is that on these swim bait rods, there's a longer distance between the reel seat and the butt of the rod, because when you're fishing the bigger swim baits, you're going to take that and tuck it up under there so that you can work it and be able to and then you could lob the bait out there. But as far as how heavy this rod is, I don't know if you can see that very well. It's got a little bit of tip to it, but you could really move some weight. Like if you hook to a 4-pound weight or a 5-pound weight and you needed to drag it or pick it up, you absolutely could do it with this rod because it's extra heavy power. You need that power to be able to drive that big 10-aught hook into a fish's mouth, especially an 8 or 10 or even bigger fish. That is crucial. And then the next phase is when we start talking about line. I have fished this Monster Jig on braid and fluorocarbon. I could go either way, really, but if you're talking braid, 50-pound is a minimum. The Sunline X Plasma is what I was playing around with. 50 or 60 without a doubt. But what I feel most comfortable with is 25-pound Sunline shooter. There's really good high quality fluorocarbon. That 25-pound is really what you're gonna need, I feel like, to let the bait work the way it's supposed to, not be worried about abrasions with rocks or anything like that. If you should be throwing it through treetops, that bigger diameter 25-pound line to me seems to come through trees, laydowns, rocks, all that kind of stuff, because that diameter is a little bit bigger. That helps come over a lot of that cover, because you're really not going to be affecting the action of this big jig. You're not going to be affecting that action. So I showed you the craw on there. That's a ledge rock. We still may have a few left on the Missile Baits website, but we're going to be getting some other big craw type trailers to put on there for you guys so you can see those. But also there's a AA swim bait, Optimum. I think they're made by Optimum. They're handmade in California, so we love made in the USA. Our jig, the Monster Jig, is made in the USA. So this bait being made in the USA works really well. I love the way it looks, the way it feels, the action of it. I'm gonna find you one. Here's a trout type color, and we're gonna stick it on this trout. So this is what it's gonna look like on that. I'll show you. So it's really kind of, you know, there's some bait fish colors and then there's some darker colors. I'm just running it on up on there just real quick like. And it looks cash money right there. And these things are only like $4, $5, whatever. They're not hugely expensive and they're hand poured in the USA. I like that a lot. I wish the Monster Jig only cost that, but the components are just very expensive. Custom hook, all that kind of stuff. So there you go. There's the rainbow trout Monster Jig with it's a different color trout trailer. We've got all kind of different ones on our website. You can go to AA's website or Tackle Warehouse or wherever's carrying those, get all the matching trailers. But that is a really nice setup as well. You can put a Kitech 6.8 on the back of that Monster Jig. That looks really, really good as well. It's got a little harder tail kick. So there's the Monster Jig setup. Not a flipping stick, not a flipping stick. You need that extra heavy swim bait rod, or you need that heavy or extra heavy punch rod to be able to control that jig. And I like the high speed on that Tatula 300. I like the higher speed. It's still a jig. I like to be able to gather a lot of line quickly. With that longer handle, I can slow it down real easy. So if I'm throwing, you know, this style where I'm going for a bait fish and I'm throwing it out there, letting it hit the bottom, I can really slow that longer handle. I can really slow it down easily and I can control it. That's not a problem at all. So that's the setup that I use for the Monster Jig. If any of you guys already have any experience with the Monster Jig, or if you want to throw your 2 cents on there, what you would throw your Monster Jig on, let me know, and then we'll bring you some more of the how-tos on fishing the Monster Jig as the season progresses, and as we get more and more fish catches on that. So if you have any questions, drop it down there. But as always, Missile Baits, Monster Jig, made in America, baby.